On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks need to answer some questions after a couple losses, and now it's starting to trend in the wrong way. What are some questions the Mavericks have to answer by the end of 2023? Reggie and I got you covered on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Mavericks, NBA champions. Bang! It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, making Locked On Mavs your first listen today. Well, the best way you can help us grow the show is to leave a 5-star review, listen every day, like the video, and comment anything below. Let us know in your comment section what's one thing the Mavericks need to figure out in the next month. By the way, like the video and comment, because lately we've been getting more comments than likes, and YouTube doesn't like that. So like the video more. Should be getting more likes than comments. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And joining me from 105.3 The Fan, the show is the Get Right. What you got for me, Reggie Adetula?
Hey, man, deviled eggs are a lot easier to make than I realized, and I found that out this weekend.
Boil an egg, cut them in half, take the yolk out.
Yep, mix
Mix
stuff
them
in.
with some mayo and stuff. Some cayenne pepper. What else you put in there?
Well, I made a homemade aioli, but we don't have to get into that. Yeah. We were doing some real chef stuff.
I'm not talking about mayo. I'm talking about aioli. It's not a sauce anymore. It's like elevated.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little fancier.
That's right. And it makes it even better when you go to the potluck or whatever, and you're like, hey, no, this isn't just mayo. Don't worry about that.
This is made of the homemade aioli.
We got some aioli in here. Yeah.
Gotta love it. All right, today on the show, the Mavs need to answer some questions for us. By the end of 2023, we're not looking towards the end of the season, the end of, 2 months, the end of the 50% of the way through the season, the trade deadline. We're not even looking at that. Let's focus on a little bit more short-term goals, right? We all got short-term goals. You want to be able to finish this. You want to be able to do that. The Mavericks, by the end of 2023, we'll have 14 more games to play. We're recording this on Sunday, December 3rd. 14 more games left. For me, they have 5 very winnable games that I look at, and I never say like gimmies or guarantees in the NBA anymore, because you just never know. The Grizzlies game,
hello Grizzlies, right?
Was supposed to be one. 5 winnable games: Utah, Portland, Memphis, Portland again, and San Antonio. Those are all very winnable games. Very bad teams. They have 4 that I think are pretty good matches: the Clippers, the Rockets again, Cleveland, and Golden State. Not as good as some of these other teams, but like pretty good, even matches. Could go either way. Then they've got a couple of tests. I think they have 5 tests. They have a Lakers game that's the second night of a travel back-to-back for the Mavericks. They have 2 games against 2 games against Minnesota, 1 game at Denver, and 1 game at Phoenix for Christmas. So that's their schedule. It's pretty even across the board. There's 5 winnable games, there's 4 tests, and there's 5 tests, and there's 4 like matchups that I feel like could go either way. And so we're going to ask some questions. These are the questions the Mavericks have to answer by the end of that stretch, basically, for me. And my first one is, can this Mavericks crew, this crew as it is right now, if you're in the YouTube chat right now, I know you're talking about trades, and I know you're talking about OG Anunoby and Dorian Finney-Smith, and I know you're doing all that, but let's focus on this team right now. Can this team learn how to hold the line on defense? Because right now, when this Mavericks team, when the bottom falls out on defense, they can't win.
Yeah.
They're 1-8 when their defensive rating drops below 120. And 120 is terrible. That's where Charlotte and Washington and San Antonio are, and Indiana. But those teams are like the worst of the worst teams. When the bottom falls out for this defense, they can't win. When their defense is above 120, not even like good, when it's just above 120, when it's not just like god awful, they're 10-0, according to Cleaning the Glass. Like,
I mean, look.
10-0. So can they just like learn how to like hold the line on defense? That's my first question.
Yeah, actually, that falls kind of closely in line with one of my questions, which is can this team figure out how to shore out the restricted circle, less than 5 feet? Currently, the opponent shooting percentage in less than 5 feet, 69.5, which is quite literally the worst in the NBA. Nice. And it's not like, okay, but, maybe teams don't get a lot of shots. No, they get shots up. They get shots up in the paint. And so with that being the case, it's like, the literal most efficient shot in basketball, the other team is not just doing it really efficiently, they're doing it the most efficiently against you. And so, yeah, man, if you can just make it a little bit harder, and I think that will put you in a place where now you're playing better defense. And you see it. I mean, obviously we could talk about the effort again, because that ends up being one of the things that comes up, particularly because that's the messaging that Jason Kidd is using, right? Talking about the effort and those types of things. And some of that, it just, again, harkens back to the Western Conference Finals team that you saw a couple of seasons ago, because it seemed like that was something that they made a conscious effort to do, which is, even if we don't have the defensive talent, we can throw a whole bunch of bodies in your way and make it so that at the very least, if you're trying to get to the rack, you're going to have to go through something. You're going to have to really have a story by the end of it. And right now, that's not entirely the case. We saw it against what was it? Was it the Thunder in that run where they showed that level of effort in trying to come back, and it starts with, hey, how about you stand between the ball and the hoop, right? Like in the rim. I was about to do the rim and the hoop at the same time, but you get it, right? Like stand between those two things and make sure that that's there is some level of obstacle there, and you can see the heights that this team can go to with the offense paired with the right amount of defense and the right type. And so I don't think that you're going to, like, we talked about this a lot, you're not going to fix the defense per se, but that's one of the places where I think that you can make a large improvement in the defense. It's just making it a little bit more difficult for teams to get right to the rack on you.
Yeah, and this is the answer to this, like you were saying, that like the team shoots 71%. Oh, this is from cleaning the glass, so it takes out garbage time. 71% at the rim, which is the second worst in the NBA. I mean, the defense just allows a ton of shots at the rim, like, and really efficient shots at the rim, because the defense isn't rotating enough. You've got to be able to fly back, and you've got to be really aware. And they every once in a while will go into zone. I haven't looked at their zone numbers in a while, but every once in a while they'll throw a zone defense out, and I swear somebody falls asleep every time they go into a zone. It's like, oh cool, we're in this zone now, I only have to take care of this little space around me. That's not how it works. You still got to be active and involved. It just doesn't happen. So you mentioned the rim, which I think is very big, and the answer is not just play lively more, even though he does affect shots at the rim for sure. Right, he can still get pulled out of the paint. It's still, he can't play 48 minutes. And teams shoot really well at the rim with Lively on the court, because it's not only about the center, it's about everybody else getting involved in the defense too. The other thing I think will help this is limiting fast break opportunities. Yeah. Five out of the Mavericks' 8 losses, the opponent scored 15 or more fast break points. So like when they get out and score easy buckets on the other end, it translates to losses for the Mavericks. The Mavericks are 3-7 this season when opponents are in transition 15% of the time or more. So like limiting those opportunities, limiting the amount of points. It seems obvious, right? But like the Mavericks have a really bad transition defense right now. They allow a lot, and their turnovers a lot of times turn into baskets, like those live ball turnovers. And the Mavericks have this 22nd ranked half court defense. They have the 26th ranked overall defense. So like, it's not that different. It's like 4 spots, but it's still a little better, right? Like it's still just a little better. So if you can stay in the half court a little bit more, it'll improve your defense a little bit. And this defense my question is not about, can they be a good defense? It's just, can they hold the line, right?
Right.
And if they could limit the fast break stuff, they could limit the transition, I think they could hold the line a little better.
Yeah, man, it's all marginal, right? The margins are really what the issue is, particularly when you have an offense that ostensibly is as good as it's supposed to be. We can talk about that as we continue on here. But like when you have, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, the ways in which the offense should be good, you feel comfortable with that. The margins matter on defense then, right? Make it that much easier. We've talked about the ways in which some of the metrics end up looking kind of a little bit dicier than they really should. And some of that is you're letting 2 points go here and 4 points go there. And that can really be the difference between wins and losses in some of these games.
Absolutely. So that's my first question is, can the Mavericks just hold the line? Can they figure out, can they find out? Can this group figure it out before we do a trade or bring in somebody else? I think they need a trade to take the next step. I don't know that this crew is going to figure out how to become a playoff defense even. Like maybe they will, but can this crew learn how to do that? And can they put the right pieces around to be able to do that with the rotation that they have right now? So that's my first question. Coming up, Reggie's got some questions. I've got some more questions about Kyrie and the rest of the rotation. So we'll get into all that coming up. Today's episode brought to you by Jace Medical. Jace Medical has solved a problem that I had never really even considered, and maybe you hadn't either. Imagine that you're traveling, or imagine you're at home even. We had a situation a couple years ago with the crazy, Snowmageddon that everybody called it. And you may not have been able to go out and get medication. You may not have been able to go to a pharmacy or something like that. With Jace, they offer this Jace case. I got one right here. They sent me one. It's a pack with 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial infections, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinuses, skin infections, ton of other stuff. They've got a booklet in there to help. They've got board certified physicians that can help. And you go through a whole, like, you fill out a form and go through a bunch of questions and everything so they know what things to send you. Visit jacemedical.com, complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. So you can have that peace of mind of knowing if I'm ever caught in a situation, I know that I have something to take care of myself and the people that you love. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jacemedical.com, use the code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Again, JASEmedical.com, jacemedical.com. Use that code LOCKEDON.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is?
It's Monday. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. Subscribe to my subtext to get texts from me, to get texts on rumors and info during the games. I do all kinds of stuff during the games. I send out a video review where I'll go back and I watch that whole fourth quarter against the Thunder again. I'll pause it. I'll point out stuff. I'll go through things. So subscribe to the subtext. Get that stuff sent straight to your phone. All right, Reggie, let's get into some more questions. Give me your first question on what the Mavericks need to answer before the end of the 2023 calendar year.
Well, I told you one of them was the restricted circle defense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's right in there with you. Offensively, funny enough, this is where another one of my questions comes up, because offense has been one of those places where we've kind of just, it's going to be good. That's cool. One thing that feels evident, especially after this weekend of basketball, is the question being, how do you manage when the threes aren't going? Because this is a team that takes a metric, ton of these, right? And so with that being the case, when they're not quite going down, you see the lulls, because we saw early in the year, you saw Grant Williams was putting in. Derrick Jones Jr. gave you some, a nice addition of those and such. And so we've seen that kind of, I don't want to say regress, because I don't know exactly where I think the median is for this team, or whatever that ultimately the right term is there. But it does not feel like you're there right now. And so with that being the case, like, how do you then add in? Because offensively, you need that to be excellent with the math that you've set up here. Your defense isn't going to be able to, pick you up at any given time. So you need to be able to do that. And this is where I harp on one of my go-tos this year, which is getting to the rack, because it feels like they do not do that nearly enough.
No.
They could be pretty efficient getting there, but you need to get there in order to, balance this out, because I always go back to the first year of the Golden State Warriors, when I vividly remember Charles Barkley being like, jump shooting teams don't win championships. And one thing that I kept thinking about is, like, did y'all not watch the Warriors? Like, they shot threes, but they also got to the rim and got buckets at the rim. And it feels like right now the Mavericks aren't doing enough of that, especially when you start seeing 3-point shots not going down.
Well, and they also had 2 of the greatest 3-point shooters of all time.
That's also fair.
That's
also fair.
If you've got that, you can win. And then they brought in Kevin Durant, who is maybe the 3rd best shooter of all. It's crazy what they were able to do. But yeah, you're completely right. Last 9 games, the Mavericks are number 1 in 3-pointers attempted still. They're taking 42 a game. And they've shot 33%, which is 27th in the NBA over the last 9 games. And they're 3-6 in those games. So, they've got to do something else besides it. The problem is, I don't know how many other answers that they have on this team. Like, who else can get to the rack? The answer was going to be Hardy, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later and what he's done. He's a guy that will definitely go to the bucket. You'd hope that Kyrie would a little, Luka will a little. And, Omax does a little bit. There's really, not a ton. Grant Williams will drive and then pull up for a little mid-range jumper. I feel like he hits one of those a game. He hasn't in the last couple of games, but
right.
And then there's the pick and roll stuff with Lively. That's obviously a staple of your offense. That stuff will really get you. But if a team takes that away, then all of a sudden all your offense is drive and kick, or Luka and Kyrie winning their matchup. Yeah, they've got to find a third heat. They've got to find something else with it.
For sure. And I wonder if some of this is just again, me realizing that the eras of basketball are shifting, and I'm feeling old a little bit. Because there's instances where I'll see kind of kick, the ball kind of fly around, and there's someone in the corner where I'm like, cut to the basket. And so I wonder if some more cutting would help. But then again, I understand spacing and the ways in which you have a couple of drivers that are, primary initiators, and you don't want to clog any situation. But I do wonder if some more movement off ball would help some of that situation as well in getting easier buckets. Because you saw Derrick Jones Jr. over this weekend, show how sometimes that type of movement can get you an easy bucket where you might be taking a three, and if you're not knocking down shots, that is, which one is better, is going and getting that layup or that dunk, or taking that three that you're not shooting at a high percentage.
They have more needs than this, but
Sure.
This was a thing I kept bringing up over and over again in the offseason. They never did it really, was they still needed a third ball handler, like one other guy.
Yeah.
And then they brought in Exum, and I was like, okay, maybe it is Exum, but he doesn't really create his own shot. He's good at, he'll drive to the rim and he'll get fouled, he'll go to the free throw line and he'll create a shot for somebody else. But it's still like a three, or it's still something it's still like a lob at the basket. And so they needed one more player to just like create their own shot a little here and there. And you'd hope that Hardy would evolve into it. And like, that was probably your answer with this, but he just, he hasn't made up. And then Josh Green showed a little bit of that here and there. Maybe he had a couple of 20-point games last year where you could see him just get to the rim, finish with like a little floater or a little hook, like baby hook or something like that. And so you'd hope that those two guys would like grow into that this season. We just haven't seen that at all really from them. And so, yeah, they do need to answer that question, because when their offense falls out, they have no shot. You can just see it. I didn't look up the exact numbers about their offense, but when they don't score efficiently, it's really hard for them to win games this season.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's very simple. Again, I will keep pointing to you can only outscore so much when you're giving up a lot on defense. So like you have to keep pace, right? It's a track meet, and if you slow down in a track meet, you will see the results you get.
Yeah, they are 2-7 when their offense falls under 118 points per 100 possessions, which is like 118 points per 100 possessions used to be not even 3 or 4 years ago was an all-time number.
All-time great, historic. Yes.
Yeah, like great. Like, so when their offense is not elite, they don't win games. It's very hard for them to win games. It's easy. Let me say it this way: when their offense isn't great, it's easy for them to lose games.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Unless Luka decides we're not losing this one sometimes, right?
And even I mean,
this is an offense that should be great. And I understand you've had some players missing at times, whatever. They're sitting at 8th in offensive rating right now, and I understand you had a weekend that was kind of, and like maybe even a week that was kind of odd in various ways, but still, right? This is a team that even with speed bumps, you need to be even higher than that. And that feels like an unfair ask in some ways, but still.
They've had some real stinkers. The Lakers one, they were like 109. The Clippers game, they're 95.
Yeah.
Offensive rating. The Memphis game, they're at 100. Like, they just had some real bad ones lately. And we're still looking at real small, pretty small sample sizes.
Absolutely.
Like 19 games or so. All right, I got one more, and then we'll go into our last set. I think they need to know if Kyrie's foot issues are long-term.
Ooh.
And I think you need to figure that out by the end of this stretch. Because right now he's been, like, last game he was out with right foot soreness. He hurt his foot in the Memphis game. He said in the first quarter, and I alluded that he just didn't look right. It just didn't seem like he, even in the post game, I hadn't listened to any of the post game comments or anything like that. And you could just tell because he was losing his dribble, and I'm like, that's not Kyrie. Come on, like, we know better than that. He was out with right foot soreness. The thing that kept him out the first 3 games of this season, or at least the first 3 games he was out, was a left foot sprain. And so the right foot, the one that he was just out, that was the one he was out at last season. And then the left foot sprain was the one he was out at the beginning of this season. So left and right foot, like multiple feet issues, that's not good, right? Like that. I don't want to go full like Twitter doctor here, but I'm nervous about the foot issues. And are they long-term things? Is it going to keep lingering? I think they need to figure that out. And then maybe if it's going to be like shut him down for a little while and get it right and then come back, right? Like you're the expert on the get right. Like, does he need to get right?
Oh, well, the tough thing about it is, do we have any assertion that, sitting him down will get him right? One of the things about Kyrie Irving, when you were going and getting him, one of the concerns was, is he going to show up to work? And showing up to work, obviously we can all point to that one thing, right? But then there was also, had some injury issues in his past, right? And so this is the things that you're contending with. And I guess I've gotten to the point where I'm like, it's fine, whatever. But no, you're right to put this front and center, because this is the building block of what you're doing, right? The whole idea is you have 2 of these things, right? And if you only have one of these things, we spent 4 or 5 years already doing that, right? We already went through those terrains, never to go back. At least you wouldn't think so. No, that's actually something that you really do have to figure out. because I mean, you've already committed to him in some ways, right? But
re-signed him multiple years, player option, all that
for sure.
So now this is now an investment. This is not an experiment so much as it's an experiment that you've invested in now. So I mean that is a different thing. So are Kyrie Irving's foot issues long term? I think they need to figure that out by the end of the stretch, by the end of 2023, so that they can take action on it before the playoffs, right? I mean,
sure. And I mean, even something as simple as, does it change the way that you work your rotation? Does it change, who you're getting involved? You have a dearth of guards to maybe operate with, and, you're not giving some of them a lot of time. Does that change the way that you look at this and, the direction that you kind of view your player personnel?
With Kyrie out, Seth Curry showed some good stuff against the Thunder. He was there part of that whole run. And so let's talk about him. Let's talk about the rest of the rotation. My next question is, who else can help? Who else can help this? Who is a guaranteed in the rotation? Who else can help? Let's figure that out by the end of 2023. We'll talk about that and more coming up. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. I'm leaving Reggie in because FanDuel right now, you can get $150 in bonus bets when you put down a $5 moneyline bet. Cowboys, Eagles. The Cowboys, minus 178 on the money line. They're a -3 favorite right now. How would you feel if somebody would put some money down on the Cowboys this weekend?
I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, Eagles have looked a little suspect of late, right? They've looked gettable, and the Cowboys look like a team that's possibly able to get them. I wouldn't hate you putting down that money.
Put down $5. If they win, you get 150 in bonus bets. So you can use that on anything else. You can do it on all kinds of others. The over/under for that game, by the way, is 51.5 That seems
let's score some points, baby.
They're putting down some points there in that game. That is like a Mavs Pacers game, basically compared to that. Go check out FanDuel. See what else they have available for you. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon as the NFL season rages on. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
Hot man, the hot player.
All right, Reggie, let's answer and talk about some more questions the Mavericks need to answer by the end of 2023. I love the Dirk drops.
It's
everything
so good.
Everything Dirk says on the broadcast is just gold. Do you have one more question?
I want to add a question now. Like, how many more times can we get Dirk on this broadcast? Right? Like, that's
okay. It happened once. It may happen again. It may happen again this year, but I don't want it more. I don't want it too often, right? Because it's just so special when we get it. So, but I do know that it may happen again. So I'll just say
okay.
That.
All right, fair enough.
Okay, my last question. We can go the distance with this.
My question, I think, folds into your question, so it'll work.
Who else can help? I think they need to figure that out by the end of 2023 because by the end of 2023, you kind of need to know who else can help this season. I know one of my big questions for this whole season was who can be in a playoff rotation in a year, in 2 years, who can potentially be in a finals run? Because like you have Luka right now and you have Kyrie. That should be a duo that you're building a championship team around, right? It just should. And so you've got to figure out who can help pretty quickly in a year or two. I think we're finding out Lively can.
Buddy, that one's been checked off.
I think we figured that out. So you've got Luka, Kyrie, Lively. I'll throw Tim Hardaway in there. Now, help can be defined in different ways. So
don't caveat the man already.
I'll let you define how help is, but he's been good this season.
Yeah, I think you.
Derrick Jones Jr. I think you're answering that. Like at least for this season, for sure, he's helping. I think
he's in rotation at the very least. Yeah,
for sure. Grant Williams, he's had his ups and downs. He's had his slump recently. I think he does still help. I think he's good on defense and all that. So I think he's still the people that want to like bench him and not play it. I'm like, okay.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's cutting off your nose to spite your face at that point. Although one of the possible questions I was considering is like, what is like, how do you make him more consistent? Because like this feels like the guy that maybe you end up, being a role player and like, you need him to be more than just like a, part of the role or, part of the rotation. You need him to be like a consistent role player. And I do wonder if like that level of inconsistency is what went through like Joe Mazzulla's mind when he's not having him in a shortened playoff rotation. And that's the level of like, it feels weird to like put like some level of challenge to him, but it's like, hey, that's the step up that's necessary and then this can't just be when it's cool, it's cool. Like you need to be one of the guys that are a pillar and a foundational piece.
He was the one that challenged himself. He was the one that said before the season, like, I'm ready to step up into this role. And I know it's a bigger role and all that. And Lively being this good has kind of pushed that into the shadows, I think, a little bit. Like he's skirted it because he should be the third most important player on this team. Yeah. Right. Like that's the role he was supposed to be pushed into. And maybe that's a little unfair because he was like what, the 9th or 10th player on the Celtics, but
well, maybe in the playoffs, but I think he was more important than that.
But there are times when like he was 3rd, 4th, like
sure.
5th most important player on the Celtics. They're just a deep team, but yeah. So I'm positive though that he can help this year for sure, and then definitely going forward.
Yeah.
Josh Green is the one that I kind of worried. I kind of was on the edge about.
Yeah, that's a good name to put.
Okay, we'll talk about 2023, and let's talk about like in the future. I think he can help this season, and he's had some good moments this season. He just hasn't taken that leap yet, and so am I grading him on a curve because he hasn't leaped forward, or is he actually just not helping this season?
No, this is the consistency boys portion of the program, right? Like the problem is we started seeing the leap last year, right? Didn't we?
Yeah.
Right. The idea is not to continue to see flashes. Flashes are only good at the beginning. At some point, you want those flashes to be consistent. I think that's, and I've tried to give him some grace here because he has not had a lot of consistency when it comes to like playing time and the ways that this goes, but it started to normalize somewhat. And so you want the performances to normalize a little bit as well. So I think that, that's a good name to bring up on, because again, he fits in with, and I guess we end up considering him as a wing because of, kind of the lack of wings, but he's another one of those that's like kind of another guard, right? Yeah. And so you've got a lot of guys in that guard room finding out which ones are the ones that you feel like at the drop of a hat, okay, I can put him in. I know what I'm getting, because that's honestly, when it comes to being a coach, those are the cards that, make it break, is the ones that feel good. It's like, I know I can put this card on the table and I will get what I'm intending to get from this, especially as we talk about the margins being narrow and everything. You can't afford to like play something and play a player and that not quite get what you expected.
That's what a playoff rotation is for, right? That's what we're trying to figure out. Who can help? Like Josh Green can help to an extent, but not in the extent where you're saying he's 100% part of a playoff rotation.
Sure.
I don't know that. He would be right now just because of the players on the roster, but then you have the next group. You have the Exum, Curry, and Hardy group. I think we talked about Hardy a little earlier. I think I think if you find out by the end of 2023 that he can help, that would be great. But I think we're kind of already trending towards he's not going to be able to help this year.
Yeah, especially because like the help that you were maybe hoping is that like maybe even a ball handler. You spent the whole preseason and summer league getting him out here like, hey, let's see if we can, get some of that going. And I don't know. I'll let you. How was your evaluation on that?
We've seen some okay things. Like in the Grizzlies game, in the first half, at least to me, it felt like he was the only one getting anything going in the half court. Like he had a lob to Lively, he had a lob to Rashawn Holmes, he had a nice mid-range. Like he can do some stuff out of a pick and roll. The problem is he's way better as a secondary player than like a primary initiator in offense. Yeah. And if you can't rely on him as an initiator of offense, then what is he doing out there? And the three ball hasn't buckets. And the 3-ball hasn't gone down for him this year as much. So, yeah, I'm trending. It's definitely trending towards I don't think he's going to be able to help this year. I didn't expect him to take the leap this year. I expected it next year. But if we're not even seeing like real like the flashes this season.
I thought the Grizzlies game would have been a perfect opportunity to get
like some flashes. Grizzlies and Thunder.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Exum and Curry, I think, are on the line of like I think they should be part of a rotation. Exum maybe a little more than Curry, but Curry the last couple of games has been good. They're like right on the line of, should they be on a playoff style rotation with the Mavs?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Especially like this is where we start getting like vet savvy, which honestly is what it felt like. It felt like what was it, the Thunder game, I guess, in a way, is like in that run. It felt like that they were the team that was making fewer mistakes. 100%. If we want to call that vet savvy, like they seem to be just kind of knowing exactly what to do in these roles. And so obviously Exum didn't play in that. Shout out to that man and his fatherhood in that way. But Curry, you can definitely see where I understand what I'm doing here, and so it's kind of interesting that Jason Kidd has not called upon him too much. But maybe that's just I know what I have in him, and when the time comes, I can dial that up.
Yeah. So there, and then with your bigs, I mean, we feel good about Lively.
Yes.
And then it's Maxey, Holmes, and Dwight, and I have questions about all three of those guys. Like
yes.
Maxey, it's his health first, and then second, he wasn't that good when he played. It's like, what role should he play?
Fair enough.
Dwight and Holmes, it's like, all right, I don't know. Like they didn't really even play that much at all against the Thunder or Grizzlies this weekend.
Yeah, and tell me if you feel the same way I'm feeling. it feels like the long-held Mavs fan, wish of like, get Dwight Powell out of this rotate. It feels like it's happening. It feels like Richaun Holmes is like taking that spot. No? Yes?
They're trying him. He's been playing over Holmes for like the last week or two since the Lakers game.
And so, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure that Richaun Holmes is playing well enough to like completely take that per se, but it seems like, and maybe I'm just like putting too much on the experimentation that Jason Kidd will ultimately do every year. But it seems like they're trying to put him in that place where like, hey, let's see if this will work a little bit better than what that Dwight Powell thing is.
And that's what you got to figure out by the end of 2023. You got to figure out your big man rotation. Is Maxey going to be available? And are you going with Holmes? Or are you going with Dwight? What are you doing? And which one of them can work or will? And if the answer is none of them, then you've answered the question.
Yeah. The question that we probably all had coming in the offseason, right? The idea was you needed another big. And so and I guess this is why the timeline works very well, because this is still well before we get to trade deadline, where I think people are still clamoring for that other big.
The last one is other wings. You've got Markieff Morris. I think the answer is no.
No.
Omax and Lawson. Lawson was part of that run with the Thunder against the Thunder.
Yeah.
Did he show something? He hit some threes. He showed great energy on defense. They needed that really badly. Omax was out there to start the run. Him and Lawson were playing together. Did they show you anything that they can help? I think they have to answer that maybe by the end of 2023 if those two can help at all this year.
Yeah, and the defensive energy definitely showed up. Lawson feel like he felt very long, right? Like on the court, especially in a game where you saw the Thunder doing, and I guess both these teams trapping the primary ball initiator, and then kind of just using that size and getting into the passing lanes. Lawson seemed to be effective in doing that, and so I was like, oh, that's nice. That's something that I had not seen him a lot of. If we see a little bit more of that with some minutes that he's thrown his way, I'd like to see a little bit more, especially because the other part of that is, can you contribute a little bit on offense? And I think that's been the question. And that's definitely the Omax question. I feel like feel a little bit more excited about the AJ Lawson because he's been around a little bit more, and Omax you could see that there's potential, but the development needs to be, it's not going to be this fast. Like Lively is spoiling us almost in this way.
Yes, he very much is. Yeah. Lawson hit those threes, but Lawson, he was with the Timberwolves like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
He's been around this a while.
Right.
I think he's towards the end of his two. I think you can do 4 years in the NBA with a two-way, I think. And so I think this may be his second to last year or last year being able to do a two-way. Yeah, it's his second to last year. So he'll be able to do a two-way next year, I think. And then he won't be able to do anymore. But yeah, so you would expect Lawson to be maybe a little more ready than Omax, but Omax brings that size that they need so badly.
Sure. But I mean, again, some of this is like you need a little bit of consistency, and that's definitely not what you're getting out of developmental Omax at this point. But again, we're talking about over the next 14 games, you said. This is not necessary. Look, the margins are thin, but this isn't the time where you need to be entirely ready. These are, like we said, where you're figuring some of these things out. And it'd be nice if Omax is even at a place, like I'd be happy if Omax is even at a place where you feel comfortable trying to figure these things out right now.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Can we answer so for the question for them is, can we get to a point where we can get to a point where it's not, what was the 2 years away from 2 years away? No, they're
yes.
14 games away from being 14 games away.
Which player was the 2 games away from being 2 away?
It was Bruno Caboclo.
Bruno?
And
yes.
It was Fran Fraschilla on the draft.
Oh, I love basketball so much.
So, yeah, there you go. Let us know in the comment section. What's one thing the Mavericks need to figure out over the next month, basically, of basketball? You can go listen to Reggie on 105.3 The Fan. You're on this week?
Yes, sir. Every day, 7 to 11 p.m. on 105.3 The Fan.
Go check it out, and go check out the Locked On Sports Today live stream. There will be all kinds of shows. You can literally all of our national shows. There will be a local spot. Maybe this show will be on there. You never know. Go check it out on the Locked On Sports Today YouTube channel and wherever you can get live streamed content. All right. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.